Do you sometimes or always feel like the things you do have to be perfect? Like there's no room for error? Well, in this video, I'll give you 4 doable ways to use your perfectionistic tendencies for good. And make sure to stick around till the end because although all the other things are really useful, the last thing is most important by far. Define and adapt perfect. Imagine you're doing a project for a professor or for your boss, and you finish the first draft and you hand it to them, and they say, yeah, this could be better. But they don't explain how it could be better. You're probably feeling pretty frustrated with your boss because the only way you know to improve something is if they tell you how to improve it. If you struggle with perfectionism, this is probably what you're doing to yourself. We often say, I just need to work harder, or I just need to spend more time on it. But we don't often say to ourselves, what we can do to actually make the product perfect. So let's do that. Before you start a project, think about what the perfect final product will look like. Things that you can actually check off a checklist. An example in my life is taking an acting job. Instead of saying to myself, I want to be a great actor and nail every scene, I make a list of what that means. So I decide on something like this. I have all my lines memorized, and the director says I did a good job. Or at least they don't say I did a bad job because, directors, they don't always give compliments. And there you go. 2 tangible, doable goals. Once you actually have specific tasks to assign to yourself that once you complete them will make you feel good about yourself, it's a lot easier to focus on those tasks and create a final product that you're happy with. Side note though, don't write out too many goals, because if you have too many of them, then you will struggle to complete them all. Which leads us to the next point. Prioritize what needs to be perfect. Let's talk about juggling. You probably know that 3-ball juggling is easier than 4-ball juggling. Actually, in general, fewer balls is easier. I personally am stellar at 1-ball juggling. Anyways, the more juggling balls you add, the harder catching and throwing gets. So instead of carefully catching and tossing in a calm manner, you start desperately throwing up 1 ball just in time to catch the next one. And eventually, inevitably, all the balls are going to fall. So how do you fix it? Well, don't even try to catch everything. Let some of the balls fall and focus your attention on the few that you can keep up. Now back to perfection. Decide on the 2 to 4 tasks that are most important to you and keep those up in the air. If you have a small assignment that's due tomorrow, maybe let this one fall and do the bare minimum. But if you have a big project for your boss that if you accomplish it and do it well will give you a promotion, yeah, keep that one in the air. Be aware of how many juggling balls you can keep up at one time. Whether, and this is the ideal, you do it by slowly building up and figuring out what your max is, or, and this is slightly less than ideal, accidentally going over and deciding, oh no, this is too much. Keep in mind that you're learning to juggle and you're gonna drop some balls. But that doesn't mean you've failed. It just means that you're trying. So no, you won't be perfect right away, but you can keep trying and work up to it. The next part is to take breaks from perfection. If you play a sport, an instrument, work on a general skill, or really do anything, you know how important practice is. Like you can't just decide to be good at running if you never go for runs. That being said, too much practice is a problem. If you decide that your first run is going to be 10 miles, you'll maybe make it a mile, depending on how your body is and how prepared you are, and then you'll start getting tired and worn out and annoyed and frustrated and your form will slip. Maybe you'll end up finishing the run, but in doing so, you'll learn to drag your feet or breathe really unevenly or even clench your fists. My violin teacher used to say that practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. If you constantly go for runs that push your body too far and practice having the wrong running form, you're gonna learn to have the wrong running form. And it's going to be so much harder to be good at running. It works the same way with whatever you're working on. If you try to do something perfectly for too long, your form will slip. And it won't be perfect because you'll be too tired to make it perfect. But okay, say you go for the right length of run, but you go every single day. No rests. You won't have time to recover, and instead of improving, you'll either stay the same or get worse because your body isn't feeling good. Again, it's the same thing with perfection. Even if you practice a little bit at a time and slowly build it up, you still have to take breaks to think about other things. Spending all of your time on perfecting something will simply frustrate you and make you not want to keep going. So make sure to take breaks, both short ones more frequently and longer ones less frequently. Because if you don't, then you're going to get burnt out just like any other skill you practice. So work on it like you would a sport or an instrument, and put in a little work at a time. And if you want specific timing, then start with simply getting done, and then maybe spend 30 minutes a day perfecting it in 10-minute increments. No more than that. Once you've done 30 minutes, you're done. And you can, of course, slowly build up and keep going, but that's a good starting point. The final and most important thing to remember is that perfection is a tool, not a necessity. The desire to do something perfectly is really useful in that it encourages us to do our best. However, it can also make you frustrated because you feel like whatever you're doing isn't good enough. It's important to recognize when you're getting frustrated so you know when it's time to move on. But how do you move on? You've decided, okay, you want this one project to be perfect, but it's really frustrating. So how do you back away? Way one, we tend to notice the flaws in our own work more than anyone else's. So take a deep breath and look at your project through someone else's eyes. Would someone else say it's good work? Does it accomplish all that it needs to? If the answer is yes to either of those, or particularly both of them, but really either, then take the win and move on. Way two is to focus on the positive. Say 3 things out loud that you're really proud of about this project. Basically, you're showing yourself that there is good in it, so you can take a break. Way 3 is to think about why it needs to be perfect. Worst case scenario, what happens if the project isn't perfect? And best case scenario, what happens if it's flawless? Will your life suddenly improve immensely? Answer these questions honestly, and you'll probably come to the conclusion that the world won't end if you don't do a perfect job, and conversely, the world won't suddenly become full of unicorns and rainbows just because you did a good job. So continue on to something else. The truth is, things aren't always, or sometimes ever, perfect. So while this video is great for learning about how to use perfectionism, watch this video next to learn more about how to cope with your imperfections. I hope this video helped you learn more about perfection in a different way, and if you have any other topics you want to hear me talk about, then please comment them below. Bye!